and then I will spotlight Shoshana so we can hear from you, and really appreciate you coming, Shoshana.
All right. Good evening, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Shoshana Kandel, and it's very nice to see some familiar faces. I'll start with introducing myself. I'm 29 years old. I'm originally from Estonia. I speak Russian. That's my mother language. My family, my father is actually from Ukraine. He was born in the Western Ukraine in the city called Chernivtsi, and my mom is originally from Estonia. So it used to be Soviet Union, everybody spoke Russian. After people studied, they were referred to a specific city. So my father actually left Chernivtsi when he was 16 and came to study in St. Petersburg and for engineering. And after that, he was transferred to Tallinn. That's how they met. Jewish community in Estonia is extremely small. So when Jewish people found each other, they basically were very lucky. So he stayed in Estonia, and that's the story. So fast forward to now. I now live in London. I've been here from 2010, and I work for WorldOrt. WorldOrt is also a very old organization. We're 140 years old. And initially, it's established in Russia straight after the Tsarist times were over to help Jewish people to acquire a trade and to be able to earn money for themselves. And with time, we have shifted towards what's needed now. And now everything is in tech. So we specialize in STEM education, and we provide the schools with equipment, with best teachers, but not only, it's obviously the Jewish values, the Jewish education, and all of that together. Basically, so the Jewish families select our schools as a destination for its soul. It's not only, these should be the best schools there are. So they should become the number one choice for Jewish families. Our operations spread throughout the world. So there are schools in Europe and in Latin America and in former Soviet Union. Now moving on to the topic of of today's meeting. In Ukraine, WorldOrt is very active. We have 6 schools, and we also have some training centers which specialize specifically on retraining women, either single women or elderly women who'd like to improve their socioeconomic status. And it's spread out throughout the country. So there are 2 schools in Kiev. I believe, I'm not sure, I believe we visited both of them on our trip. Um, they are different sizes. So our biggest school has about 1,200 students in it, and the smaller one in Kiev about 450. There are also schools in Zaporozhye, which is in the eastern part of Ukraine, and in Odessa, and the other one in Chernivtsi, which is in the western side of Ukraine. So we are in touch with our teachers on a daily basis. And in fact, there was a call this morning at 10 a.m. And the situation is really devastating, and it's traumatizing for us to see that it's happening in the 21st century. So obviously none of the schools are open. All the children are now put into the distance learning. So what's happening actually on the ground? Kiev is probably in the worst state out of all of our cities. Before it all started 2 weeks ago, when we were putting together proposals and fundraising efforts, we thought that Odessa and Zaporozhye, because they are in the south and East Ukraine, would be the most vulnerable locations, and those would be the locations that will need our help the most. But it turned out that actually most of the attacks are happening, most of the bombings are happening in Kiev. My colleague, who is a director of ORT Ukraine, 2 days ago, she moved from her apartment block, which is like a skyscraper building. She moved to her friend's house because they have a good basement and safer, living conditions. She moved there, and the video that you probably saw all over BBC and internet, the tall building that gets bombed, this building has covered her apartment block that she lives in. So it's really it's hitting close to home, and it's an actual war, no matter. So important thing to tell you, because we live in the UK and we are privileged in a way to get all sources quite unprejudiced and straightforward. However, people in the former Soviet Union, in these countries, they get a lot of propaganda and a lot of biased media. And there are still a lot of people who believe that what Russia is doing is defending themselves from the NATO. And this is not called war, and this is just a necessity. So obviously, from the other side, it's also a lot of pushed media and pushed news. So on a daily basis, as an organization which stays out of politics, we need to deal with a lot of fake news from both sides and stay objective and focus on our families and on our students. So the plan at the moment, how to help the families and what to do. We know that about 10 families have left Odessa before the beginning, like last week, they left the country. Like not many families have left the countries out of our students and out of our schools. We are in touch with Sokhnut, like JDC and other Jewish agencies, which constantly organize a lot of help for the families. There were special trains that run from Kiev to Lvov to get people out of there, organized by different Jewish organizations to help out. There are lots of aids, and a lot is being done. However, the problem that we are facing, for example, we have made a transfer on Thursday. It's impossible to. The banks refuse to convert dollars into Ukrainian currency, and this hopefully will be done on Monday. Then the next stage, the problem is that all the ATMs are empty. It's impossible to take out cash. The whole country has basically went backwards. It was a very forward-facing and modern country where everything was done with touch. You touch your card and you do the transfer. However, now it's all gone back to cash. As of today, in Kiev, the situation is worse in terms of groceries and going into supermarkets. And as you may know, the curfew was there for the 3 days, and it finishes tomorrow at 8 a.m. And that's when people will be able to hopefully go back and stock up again. In other countries, I know that school principals are organizing special packets and aid for the families, and some schools have opened their doors for the families to actually sleep in the schools, because it's in some cases safer than being in a tall buildings, and some schools also have basements. Our countries of this Eastern Bloc are not like Israel. We're not prepared for the war. Not many houses do have any shelters or basements where it could be safe. As you may have heard from the news, Kiev overground, which I believe that on our trip, the comment was made that the underground in Kiev is very, very low. I think it's one of the deepest undergrounds in the world. And somebody made a comment that it would be good shelter in case the war starts. And unfortunately, we have lived till the day that this is the case. And lots of people are now in the underground. Just a little bit of my personal side of the story. I'm trying to be neutral and not to, make any comments, because I represent World Dort and we are apolitical. And I need to tell you that we do have a lot of operations in Russia, and this affects us in a way that in case all these sanctions, in fact, come into place, I'm not sure how we will be able to support our Jewish schools and our Jewish families in Russia who are not who are definitely haven't, this is not what they wanted. And this is not what most of my friends in Russia wanted. And everybody on that side of the border, not everybody, but my representation is just limited, but people who we are friends with, they are in the same shock and they're ashamed. And this is very heavy for them because that the country is not exactly democratic and there is not much that could have been done or can be done. And those people who went on the first day for the demonstrations, a lot of them were arrested, a lot of them were taken into custody, and it's not easy. However, we have a lot of friends here in London from Ukraine whose parents are currently there, and this feeling of helplessness and not being able to do anything is killing all of us and them. But there are a lot of volunteers who are helping to get together some gift aid and try to kind of put it in the vans and get it over to the border, because a lot of people have managed to cross the border and there are still a massive queues on the border, and people are currently not allowed to cross the border by car. So they leave their cars and they cross by foot. My husband's company has had a large office in Kiev, and they managed to get about 50 families out before everything started. They have about 70 families on the border at the moment, and they have a squad of volunteers in Romania and in Poland who are meeting the people who are crossing the border with children, with elderly. So it's really like, my grandma is still alive, and she probably remembers how it was back in the Second World War when these countries fought together against the big evil. But now young people in my generation in Ukraine are having to go through this again. Another thing that I would like to mention about Estonia is that we are a country of European Union and a country of NATO. And obviously for me and my husband, who is also from Estonia, it makes us worry in a way that NATO has supplied talent, because we are, so when I was at school, it took me 4 hours by car to be in St. Petersburg, and that was like a weekend fun. You go to Russia, you come back when there was no visa, and it's very, very close. Anyway, so what they've done, they've put a lot of military ammunition on our borders. And my father today said that they have placed some nuclear weapons there. So NATO is very, very close. And it makes us terrified that in case something goes not according to plan, our families and our parents are in a very close proximity to the aggressor. And there's nothing we can do, and there is no way we can stop that. However, I'm sorry, can you just give me one second and I'll be back with you?
I think Shoshana has a little one at home as well, so.
I'm here. Just my cat wanted to get in.
It was your cat? I thought it was your baby.
No, she's sleeping. So I wanted to say that, there's always two sides to a medal. That on my social media, I have noticed a lot of weird comments about some of my friends who have kids here, like older kids who speak Russian, but they have no, they were born here and they have no relation to the country itself. On the first day of the war, when they came back from school, some of them instantly got bullied just because they spoke Russian, and were asked, oh, so who do you support? Do you support Putin? And what would happen if Russia was attacking Italy? Which side would you pick? And this is terrifying because these are innocent children, and they have obviously not supported this regime, and this is what's happening at the moment. I'm not saying that it's all the people are doing that, but there will always be a number of people who will jump on this train to project some sort of hate. And I believe that it's also important for everybody to remember that this is one person ambitions and actions and his team of people, but it's not the nation and it's not the people who speak the language. And unfortunately, they have become the prisoners of this situation. So I don't know if you want to ask me some questions. I will try to answer, but I hope that I've given you an overview of what's happening. I will also mention that our plan for the future is that we are hoping that there will be a gap, maybe, you know, like sometimes there's 24 hours of when they put a stop to all the military action, and people who will be able to get out, everything is ready in terms of all the Jewish organizations are ready to accept everybody in Poland, in Romania, in all those countries. Everything is set to help the people out of this situation. So we are getting the transfers. We are currently exploring an option of whether it's possible to send money from here or from Switzerland already in Ukrainian currency, not in dollars or in Swiss francs. So they arrive in the currency, because apparently electronic transfers are still working, and hopefully people will be able to get whatever they need. And just to give you an idea of what they need is things like bio toilets for people who are staying at schools, warm clothing, lots of drinking water, medicines, just clothing and things like that. Yeah, so now I think I'm done.
No, that's great. No, that's great. And is there an appeal here in the UK to help those that are coming from? Is that something that you're involved in terms of raising here the goods or help, or is that
yes, we are raising here, but we are raising here to give aid. I don't believe UK has yet taken the law that people can only if you have a close relative you can come to the UK. So many countries like Poland, Hungary, and Romania, I believe they instantly give the refugee status to all the Ukrainians. However, I don't think that's true for the UK.
It's been clarified here. There are a lot, and many people are. Shoshana, that was really, really helpful. I think for all of us. I think one of the things that, sad as it is, I understand, sort of learned from what you were saying in some ways, is that is that everyone loses here. So clearly for us, our focus is on Ukraine because it's being attacked, and there is a refugee surge away from Ukraine. But also, what was interesting is the relationship to those in Russia who will lose out. You know, Jewish organizations, people who are in need, school kids who will also lose out, who are nothing to do with this and the decision, but will lose out because of the sanctions that obviously are needed to try and rein in Putin. So I think that also it's very, very difficult. What I think we'll do, if you don't mind, Shoshana, is because Stacey's here from World Jewish Relief, stay with us. Or if you need to help your child or your cat or whatever, do that. We'll go to Stacey. We've got one or two reflections, Shoshana, from two members of the trip that you ran with us, Saul and Avi, which would be lovely for you to hear as well. And then after Stacey and those reflections, if there's one or two questions, we could maybe take then. So I'll give you a bit of a break, but that's thank you, Shoshana, because it was to hear your personal side as well, and the way you put what's going on in Estonia, and we don't think of it that way, that it's quite worrying, really. And for, you know, we worry here, but for you and your family in Estonia, even more so. So thank you. And what I'm going to do is introduce now. I will remove spotlight, right? And I will spotlight Stacey. Stacey Shamma works for World Jewish Relief. international coordinator as well. I have to make sure I get the right name of your title, Stacey, which is Director of International Programs and Partnerships for World Jewish Relief. I went on a trip actually with a number of rabbis to Zaporozhye with Richard Verber when he was working for World Jewish Relief. We saw a number of the projects there and actually help that was being given to those who had to leave their homes in Luhansk and Donetsk to go to Zaporozhye and were refugees themselves. I thought it was incredible what Shoshana said about how someone must have made a comment in the underground in Kiev that, you know, wow, this would be quite helpful in a war situation. And we didn't think of this war. But it would be really good to hear from you, Stacey, an update on World Jewish Relief and the projects that you have in Ukraine and how things are at the moment. So thank you for coming.
Thanks, Rabbi Mason, and hi everyone. Yeah, I mean, it's just an incredibly fast-moving situation that I think, despite many predictions and warnings, scenario planning that we were doing, I don't think anyone really expected things to unfold quite so rapidly. Just a week ago, we were talking to our partners in Ukraine who are far more concerned with COVID, with inflation, with huge price increases across the country than the threat of war. So I think this has deeply shocked so many Ukrainians, as well as clearly us and all over the world. But our focus in Ukraine has been supporting for over 30 years older people to live out their lives in dignity, supporting underemployed and unemployed to find work, and to support deeply vulnerable families as well. So, you know, the need is already there. It's really significant already. And I'm sure if many of you have been to Kiev and Zaporozhye, then you would have seen that yourself. But we are incredibly concerned about what this will do to the community and to people going forwards. Many of the cities that we've been working in have come under heavy shelling and ground combat, particularly, as Shoshana said, in Kiev, in Kherson, in Kharkiv, in Zaporozhye. We've heard of at least one client's home who has been shelled, of hospitals that are full of casualties on the front line, and I'm sure we'll find out more in the coming days and weeks as well. It's just really unknown. I mean, obviously the latest news today about Putin moving Russia's nuclear deterrent to special alert is incredibly concerning, but then there's also hope of some kind of diplomatic path, although who knows what that might mean for the future of Ukraine as well. So we're reaching out to our 29 partners throughout the country daily to check up on them, both personally and professionally. You know, we've got such deep-rooted partnerships there. I've been working for World Jewish Relief for 12 years. I've been to Ukraine many times. My team are really close with so many partners and participants of our programs that we are trying to ensure that they themselves are safe and not putting themselves at risk, as well as trying to reach as many people as possible with ongoing support. I was in touch with a partner in Kiev who was also very near that building that got shelled, and sent me an incredibly disturbing and distressing video of what that looked like from his angle. But he has then left the city. He actually told me today that he managed to get at least some sleep today and is feeling a bit calmer. So, you know, I think it's just changing daily for people on the ground. But amazingly, our partners are still, where possible, delivering services. So home care, particularly in cities that haven't been, you know, badly hit, is still being delivered in some places. Although, again, we recognise the massive risks for home care workers themselves. They aren't prepared for this, and many are leaving the cities or finding shelter as well. But we have also forwarded funds to our partners this week, and we have been able to send those across. Partners have received that money so that they can both ensure that they're able to pay salaries for their staff, as well as continue services. They've also been, I mean, they're just incredibly resilient. They're checking in with clients daily as well. They're holding online activities where possible, but they're also buying up food stocks and medical supplies and petrol, and supporting people to find shelter or to move locations. But again, in the last few days, as Shoshana said, ATMs are running low on cash. Supermarkets are low on food stocks. They're also prioritising for the army as well. So there's even less stock for civilians, and there's high queues for petrol and not much there as well. But again, and actually I was also in touch with the rabbi in Zaporozhye, if you met him. He's been opening his house up to families to shelter. The synagogue there also has a basement and has been sheltering families there too. And we're aware, obviously, that thousands of people are trying to leave the country as well. Something like 370,000 have already left. There's estimations of around 7 million people will be displaced, around 4 million people will aim to leave. But again, and Rabbi Mason, as you said, the queues at the border, it's taking ages for people to leave. It's around 27 hours to get into Moldova at the moment. But we're also supporting partners in Moldova, in Poland, to welcome refugees, to welcome them with accommodation, with food, medical supplies. And we're looking both short-term and long-term. We're looking at the psychological impact this is going to have, and the trauma, personal trauma on so many people. And one of our areas of expertise is also supporting people to find employment, both in Eastern Ukraine. We've been working for over 10 years to try and help people find employment. And importantly, in the UK, we also have a programme supporting refugees to find employment. And so we are well placed to help people resettle wherever they might be. And we will ensure that we are preparing those programmes now to do that. And we are also working beyond the Jewish community as well. Since 2014, we've been supporting people in the buffer zone who, for whatever reason, haven't been able to leave or haven't wanted to leave. And so we've been providing food, medical support, as well as wood and winter utilities, so that they can meet their daily needs as well. But it has been obviously very tricky to reach partners in recent days, but we will ensure that as soon as that area is accessible, that we will do all that we can to ensure that we're reaching those people as well. I guess I just wanted to add, I think that there's nothing really to indicate that the Jewish community is at any greater risk than others at the moment. War is indiscriminate. But what we have heard from partners is that they are concerned about a breakdown of law and order, of riots and looting on the street. And when that does happen, then minority groups can be targeted, and we're just going to be keeping a close eye on that as well. So yeah, obviously, as I've said, we don't know how this is going to unfold. It is changing so quickly, but we are so grateful to everybody who's been supporting us. We launched an appeal. Actually, we came to a decision to launch an appeal on Tuesday, which was before the invasion. And I think most people who received our letters received them maybe Friday or over the weekend, which was already outdated. I think invasion had already happened by that point. But we've had such an outpouring of support from the community, and we are really so grateful, because it will enable us to reach as many people as possible in Ukraine and beyond, to both meet their needs now and in the coming weeks and months to come. We also do have a briefing event at JW3 on Wednesday at 7:30 if people wanted to attend both online and in person. We're hoping that our head of older people programs will be speaking, and she's obviously much closer to the partners, and will be giving a more detailed update as to what we're doing, as well as we're hoping, internet permitting, one of our partners will hopefully join as well. So do join if you are able to. But yeah, thank you so much for all of your support. And we, our partners are so grateful as well. We send them pictures of, us at the demonstrations and doing all that we can, and they feel that support are really grateful. So yeah, happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I mean, I must say, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, I have the utmost respect for the work that World Jewish Relief do, that you all do. Really, it's a. I think the word. I suppose I'm going to word, you know, and I'd add Orton as well. The word Kiddush Hashem, the sanctum, you know, in the sense of a really positive Jewish output that helps Jewish communities, but helps everyone, you know, and is there. I remember being in the north of Greece, where there was World Jewish Relief work with partners there in Idomeni, people crossing into Europe who were refugees from the Middle East and beyond, and here now, obviously. So really, really amazing work. And if you want to also, Stacey, put in the chat, if you can, the information about the meeting Wednesday. Was it Wednesday, the JW3 meeting?
Yes, I'm not sure if we've actually got anything on the website. I'll have a quick look. And
okay, either that or yeah, and certainly and any appeal, if there's a link to the appeal you want to put in there for everyone. I've sent it out to the community as well, but certainly feel free to put that in. What I might do, Stacey, is go on. We've got one or two really interesting reflections, and I'll come back and see. So stay with us. We certainly won't go beyond an hour, but as in an hour in total, not more an hour. And in case you are thinking of Stacey's surname, yes, Stacey is a cousin, I think a second cousin of Greg and Jez. Greg, I think, is with us in the Zoom room here. So it's good to have it in the family. So thank you, Stacey, really appreciate that. And we've got here Saul and Avi, Saul and Avi Freeman, who both came with us. In fact, I remember very well because I'd only taken my tablet or my Kindle with books, and so for Shabbat I couldn't read, and Avi supplied me with one or two very good books to read on the Shabbat. But we had a really meaningful trip in Kiev. We got to see the beauty of Kiev. We got to see shuls there, the beauty of the synagogue life as well, and the Jewish community. But we also, in a sense, touched on the conflict that was already going on for a few years at that point in the East. So over to Saul and to Avi, just for one or two reflections on our time in Kiev.
Okay, yes. Hi, everybody. This is going to be quite brief, but Saul can go first.
Sure. When I went to Ukraine, it was an incredible experience to see what Jewish life was like in a part of the world I would never usually visit, and experience Jewish culture in a way I would never really experience it. This makes it all the more shocking about the horrifying events which is taking place currently and the crisis in Ukraine. I've recently been in contact with Ilya, the boy I was paired with. I sent him some kind words of regard, and he was grateful about the awareness and concern that we were showing. And that's it. Okay,
and I'll just follow up briefly to say that, as Rabbi David said, that it was a really wonderful few days that we spent, a group of about 15 or 16 of us 4 years ago, and it's nice to see Shoshana here tonight, who we haven't seen since then. But we enjoyed ourselves enormously learning about the Jewish history, and whether it was Golda Meir, Levi Eshkol, Shalom Aleichem, all these greats of Jewish history who hail from Ukraine and Kiev, and now, of course, that continues as we hear and we see the remarkable behavior and leadership of President Zelensky, who himself, is a grandson of a Holocaust survivor. So we read all the siblings of his grandfather actually perished. And one thing that stuck in my mind from that trip was and there's been a reference to it tonight already, was the beauty of the underground stations. And many of us took photographs of it. There was one in particular I remember, I've got it on my phone, and it's a remarkable thing to look at when you compare it to the sort of humdrum architecture of a London underground. And I don't mean to talk that down, but this was really something very beautiful. And so it's quite shocking now when you see on the television young families, young children, old people lying on the platforms of these architectural wonders, and it's really very upsetting to see that, and so we hope that this comes to an end as soon as possible. I think the final thing is to say it's worth mentioning too that if we're to believe what we hear and read, then in fact many, and Shoshana made a reference to this as well, about the many people in Russia, and if we are to believe what we hear and read, many of the young Russian soldiers are conscripts who seem to have no idea what they're doing, and but equally, to it's not stretching it to say that probably that they're victims too of Putin's regime now. But obviously, we're thinking about our friends that we made in Kiev and the experiences that they're having primarily. But it's worth mentioning that as well. And so that's it, really. We wish, obviously, just the best and hope that this comes to an end and that there's a peace that everyone can get on with living normal lives as soon as possible. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Saul, and thank you, Avi, because that was really, really meaningful. I have to say, really, really touched Saul by the fact that you kept in touch and you were in touch with the twin there. And actually, something we have had a group. I can't remember who it was, but one of the group that we have a WhatsApp group from the trip. Sort of brought that group back to life. I completely forgot. You have these groups that suddenly, we had that, and we've been talking on it, and it'd be actually really, I think, quite appropriate to see if other children who were on that, others of your colleagues saw, would be able to get in touch with their twin. Maybe that's something, Shoshana, we could work on, because I think that'd be really quite, that being in touch with and showing care, I think, is at least something. Can't solve the situation, but it's got to be something. So really, really, that's wonderful, Saul. Really wonderful. Now, does anyone else have a reflection from that trip that's here, or anyone want to ask a question of either Shoshana or Stacey? I mean, there's 1 or 2 minutes. This isn't a seminar question and answer session, so I don't really want to go deep into loads of questions. It's more a reflection. If anyone has a reflection or of a feeling that they have at the moment, it's a good moment to share that. If you would like to, please feel free to. You're amongst friends here and compatriots in our community. So anyone here, who else was on the trip? Was Edie on the trip? Tara, were you on the trip, Sharon? Edie was on it. And Tara, do you want to come in, Tara? Or Edie, does Edie want to say something? Or Edie's mum, who I think was on the trip.
I just had I was just flicking through the photographs actually that we took on the trip from the workshops we did of hollow making and going into the schools, and just the sort of getting to know the city and walking around. I mean, it's a wonderful experience, and those very intimate meals that we had. I mean, I will not forget the evenings that we had together with the community and Edith's twin. Obviously it makes it particularly personal, I suppose, and resonates because of our time there. And it was actually, 4 years, a week ago that we were there. So it's quite a shock, and that's it. But it's very concerned really for the families that we met and the community there.
Yeah. Tara, do you want to come in? Yeah, go on. You're muted.
Okay. Hello.
Hi, Tara.
Hi. Yeah. The same as everybody else really that was on the trip. For last week, just as tension was building up in the news, I started to get all the photos on my Facebook and Google Photos, 4 years ago today, and I'd open it up and, we were remembered by that amazing motherland statue, or in the Museum of War. And I'm now thinking, oh my God, there's going to be another exhibition hall added to that Museum of War, which was incredible that we went to. And thinking about all the people in the community and what's happening to them now. And I've got pictures of the underground, and we took them in just like, I took videos and pictures because it was architecturally so beautiful. And now those beautiful places are being used as a place of shelter. It's just unbelievable. Looking out of our window in that bizarre hotel we stayed in with a sushi bar and God knows what else, they had, you know, the picture of the Dynamo Kiev football stadium was from my window of the hotel. And we've, you know, Cosmos, he's still got the Dynamo Kiev scarf that him and Maisie bought on the trip to the market. It's just, it was such a modern European city. I can't believe that it's become, there's guerrilla warfare happening on the streets that we actually walk down. It's just shocking, and it almost makes me feel that if it can happen there, it can happen anywhere. And thank God that they've got, in a way, they've got so many countries surrounding them that at least there are escape routes for, you know, for people that really need to escape. Keep thinking in the UK, as an island, we don't have that option. But yeah, it's just, I think the fact that all my friends, obviously, and all my WhatsApp groups, my school ones, my work ones, everybody is united in worry and grief for the people of Ukraine. But I think also because we had that, when you've been to a place and seen it and lived there, even for a short amount of time, it just feels much more personal. That's all.
I think when I remember on the, when some of the families were on, we had a Shabbat in Kiev, which obviously threw up a number of choices as to whether you go to the, you know, the merchandise shop at the Dynamo Kiev stadium or you know, wherever you go. And we had a few hours free, remember, in the afternoon. And I was like, what am I going to do? I'm, you know, keep Shabbat, where am I going to go? So I went to Maidan, to the Maidan Square. There was an exhibition about genocide, actually, in the Maidan Square, and historical genocides. But I remember feeling a sort of feeling of hope there, because that had been where the Maidan revolution was, I did 4 years before. There was a sort of feeling that people mattered. What people wanted mattered. And that's quite sad, really, given where we are now. Daniel Shaw has written to me because we have obviously guards that guard our synagogue from Poland. Przemek is one of them, and he was there this morning, and I had a conversation with him. Daniel, you should come in, not me, because it was interesting to hear perspective from Przemek.
Yeah, sure. So, well, first of all, I'm used to seeing Przemek in the mornings when I come to shul, especially on a Sunday morning, and you know, his normal persona is, you know, he's a tough guy, as you would sort of expect for a security guy. Don't mess with me, and you know, I'm not going to be riled or upset by anything. I think this morning he was not in that state. What I didn't know until this morning is that Przemek's wife and kids actually live in Poland still. He's Polish, and he sort of spends 3 weeks per month here and then 1 week back at home with the family in Poland. And so apart from his tone that was very worried, I would say very unhappy and nervous and a bit scared, what he was telling me was that his wife, speaking to his wife, and despite the fact that I think he said they're more than 500 kilometers from the Ukraine-Poland border, where his family lives, but apparently it's extremely busy in terms of noisy military aircraft. So there's some, these will be NATO planes, but there is clearly some build-up of resources that's going on intensely in Poland, it now being on the NATO front line. And this, his wife found that very sort of scary and unnerving. What he spent about 20 minutes telling me is he just could not believe that this was happening in the 21st century, that, you know, 80 years after the end of World War II, it seems to be, you know, the same realities are playing out. And he was sort of pleading with me saying, you know, did people not learn? Did people not learn from history that, you know, there is a pathway that these terrible invasions and government by dictatorship takes us and the suffering that it entails. And it's, I guess, like perhaps a lot of people, I'm watching a lot of Sky News and probably glued to it at the moment, but just to hear a personal insight from a tough guy is actually, you know, I found that very powerful. I've been kind of thinking about it and reflecting on it all day. And this is for Arshil. Czemek is, you know, always around and keeping us safe.
And just to add to that, Daniel, a conversation I had when I left this morning with him was that he talked in terms of the opening of the hearts of Polish people. Polish people are not always people of the heart. You know, they've had to go through difficult times, and obviously been under the, you know, under the control of communism and Soviet Union, etc. in their time. And he was talking about the opening of, he's seen something new in how Polish people have acted, which I think was quite interesting. Okay, so again, I'd like to really thank Shoshana for coming and taking your time this evening. Thank Stacey as well for coming. Thank all of you for being here. I think this has been just, I mean, you know, we're helpless. It's helpful in the helplessness. We all feel pretty helpless, but I think having got together, our community has been to Kiev and we are thinking about it. And we have learned also about what goes on, and there are appeals out there, and there is support that we can give. What I want to finish with is Psalm 120. I'll read it in the English. And then the Chief Rabbi's prayer. A song of ascents. I called to the Lord in my distress, and he answered me. Lord, save my soul from lying lips, from a deceitful tongue. What will a deceitful tongue profit you? What will you gain? Only a warrior's sharp arrows and a hot coals of broomwood. Woe to me that I dwell in Meshech, that I live among the tents of Kedar. I have lived too long among those who hate peace. I am for peace, but whenever I speak of it, they are for war. And the Chief Rabbi's prayer. Sovereign of the universe, who hearkens to our prayers, we stand before you in solidarity with all who are enduring the darkness of human conflict in Ukraine. May you protect all innocent men, women, and children at this moment of great peril for them, their country, for Europe and the world. Bring fortitude to the vulnerable, resilience to the insecure, and strength to those who live in fear. Incline the hearts of national leaders towards peace and reconciliation, and bless them with the wisdom, vision, and perseverance needed to end this war and restore peace to the region. Almighty God, strengthen the hand of those who pursue peace, not war. Bring harmony where there is hostility, relief where there is pain, and hope where there is despair. May you make peace in high places, make peace for all on earth. V'chein yeh ratzon, may this be your will, and let us say Amen. So again, thank you all for coming. I hope that for all of us, even within the anger that we will share about what's happened, we will, I know, all hang on to our compassion and our sense of humanity and humaneness, because what gets us through as people, as Jewish people, and as humans is our compassion. It's okay to want war and to be naive about the possibility of there never being war at the same time. It's okay to understand that we need to defend and fight for values, but at the same time, not want war and think war is a bad thing at the same time. So I wish you all safety, a good evening, and thank you all for coming.
Thanks.
Well, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good night. Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone. Thanks, Shoshana.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacey.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Keep well, everyone.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very much.
Our pleasure. Thank you, Avi and Saul. It was great.